And I'm back. I'm back. Oh, hang on. I forgot the most essential part of tonight's little presentation. For those of you who have watched me for any length of time, might have suspected, Paul wasn't being appropriate enough to be included in even my very generally, quote, inappropriate, unquote, things that I do. So I didn't make an overt attempt to include him. I just thought, well, maybe things will come around that he could be included, but it didn't work out. It's not that I don't try, guys. I mean, I really do like the guy. I do care about him. Anyway, God bless us all. Meanwhile, I was able to Skype a bit with Tony Ballman out in Tucson, and he and his whole sort of soiree of people are going off to southern New Mexico to go to a mountain sort of like cabin retreaty thing. It looks, he showed me the stuff, you know, the site that they rented it from. Good grief, you know, then it just hit me all of a sudden, wham, you know. Joe, you know, you can look around for neat things and places to stay on the internet, and now you've got enough wherewithal that if you really just want to do it, you can do it. And that's the first time that hit me that I could actually do that kind of stuff. I mean, I've always felt like I've been kind of locked into a track, you know. Yeah. Let's not get too bristic there, dude, you know. That's like the old flick on the ear. God likes to give you the flick on the ear from time to time. You bet. Anyway, so my friend Tony in New Mexico gave me a thing called, this from the Skeptical Scalpel. It's a blog called The Skeptical Scalpel. Apparently he's a retired surgeon who apparently was the chairman of the residency program at some university, as those often are. And it's called skepticalscalpel.blogspot.com. I'll see if I can put the link in down here. I tried to sign up for his subscription to his things, and or at least the comments, or so I could comment, but they insisted on using my deactivated Gmail address, the one that basically ends up in cascades of comments from my YouTube videos coming in that I have to delete. So I'm not going to do that again until I can figure out a way to, or somebody can show me a way to, where I can just subscribe to his thing and then comment on individual posts from time to time. I guess I'm going to have to just depend upon the kindness of strangers. The kindness of strangers has gotten me, well, it's pulled me out of a lot of bad spots in my life. I'm going to tell you that right now. I will not, let's not denigrate the kindness of strangers. But let's just start examining this a bit. This is an exercise in drug error. Well, we all know that one of the first things I was told by a more senior resident when I was a surgery resident, first year surgery resident, was that if something is happening that doesn't seem right, it's got to be a drug error. 70% of the time in my life, that's been true. Now, sometimes you just have an outlier. There's always going to be an outlier. I mean, it's called a bell curve. Somebody's going to be out on either end, you know. But John Stanford was very correct in that. John Stanford, by the way, was doing heart transplants up in Fort Wayne. I don't know what he's doing now. He had a falling out, but we're both very opinionated people. I have no quarrel with the guy. I'd love to meet him again. I mean, we were good friends, and we made a lot of money together. You know, took care of a lot of people together. And but if there's something going on that you don't think's right, it's 70. You know, most of the time it's a drug error, and that's true. So here's this woman. I'm going to sort of. I really wish I knew who this guy was so I could give him appropriate credit. Because I think he was probably chairman of a surgery department when I was a surgery resident and an anesthesia resident, and then briefly on the faculty of a university, you know, Ohio State University. A 75-year-old woman at Vanderbilt University, okay, not some East Jesus thing in Brazil somewhere, died after receiving intravenous vecuronium, which is a neuromuscular blocking agent, a drug that causes muscle paralysis instead of Versed, which is midazolam, a water-soluble benzodiazepine well, I know we used to call it anti-anxiety drug. How's that? An amnestic drug in some people. They characterize it as a sedative. Okay, fair enough. Here's what happened. All right. I'm going to take this man's word for it. But there's no reason not to. Shit. She had been recovering well from an intraparenchymal brain hematoma after a fall. Well, my mother had one of those. I mean, she fell down the steps at my sister's place on Drummond Island and brained herself. She had a fairly large frontal lobe hematoma, and she was in Traverse City Hospital for 5 days until it became clear that we couldn't afford to keep her there. And I couldn't afford to stay. At that point in my life, I couldn't afford to stay because I was camping out in my car. It was like 20 degrees, so I slept in the Mercedes, you know, for 4 days out in the parking lot, and the hospital security weren't any too happy about me being out there for 4 days. I explained to them, well, my mother's a patient in the hospital. I didn't cut any ice on them, so I had to go find another place to, you know, stay. There was one place that was a nice place, but the phone in the downstairs office also rang into an extension phone up in the room. And this guy got a lot of calls. And so after about the 10th call, I went over and I pulled that fucking phone out of the wall. And I thought I had settled the bill when I checked in with my credit card. So in the morning around 6 o'clock, I just got out. I just left. And then I went to a Holiday Inn, and boy, I wish I'd been back to the place I had been the night before, because this thing, they were charging like $110 a month, and this was in good Lord, this was in 1998, I think. So multiply that by about 4. You know, inflation adjusted. Okay. Well, be that as it may. Intraparenchymal brain hematoma after a fall. She was awaiting a full body. I don't know why they needed a full body scan. Full body positron emission tomography scan. A full body scan? Good Lord. I don't know, maybe they're looking for possible metastatic occult tumors. I don't know. The patient said she was anxious. One of my very favorite words. More of that anon, perhaps. About being in the machine because she was claustrophobic. Well, I have never had one of these, so I can't denigrate somebody's opinion about that. However, I will say I have a great deal to say about people who use the word anxious. I particularly recall a nurse at 2 in the morning that called me and woke me up about a post-op patient that apparently had not been an issue until she went in and woke him up. The guy was sleeping peacefully, by the way, you know, post-operatively. She woke him up. Well, that's what nurses do, don't they, sometimes? You know, don't get me wrong, I love nurses. Good nurses are worth their weight in gold. She says, he is upset. So I'd be upset too if you came in and woke me up, which you've already done just now. He says, he's worried. I said, well, he ought to be worried. He just had a big ass operation. She was not of this country. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? She says, can you come down and see him? I said, but is his blood pressure okay? Yes. Is his pulse okay? Yes. Is he breathing okay? Yes. Is he in great deal of pain? No, not at all. I said, then what can I do for him? Oh, I don't know. I said, do you think I should come down and sing him a song? Well, as it turns out, I read a thing in the Daily Mail the other day that suggested that maybe that's exactly what surgical residents should do when patients are in distress. Go down and sing them a song. Well, it's an interesting idea. I mean, if you've got, you know, like in the Cincinnati program when I first interviewed for it, it was a 7-year program, and a lot of us every other day on call, and I'm thinking like, you'd be glad if somebody sang you a song in the call room every now and again, wouldn't you? Good grief. That's like, well, it's not slavery, but it's indentured servitude in all but name. But I'll tell you, when you graduated from that program, you could take boards in general surgery, thoracic surgery, general surgery, thoracic surgery, orthopedic surgery, and I mean, Lord, it's like the complete surgeon. The only thing you couldn't do was take boards in neurosurgery. Which reminds me of a guy that was in my program he came to our program as a 3rd-year resident from neurosurgery in West Virginia. He carried a rainy drill in his pocket all the time. He says, you always need to carry a rainy drill in your pocket in case you need to you come across somebody needs a burr hole. Well, you know, he's absolutely true. You got some of these head injuries coming in, you don't know. Indeterminate head injury. Do a burr hole on either side. Let's see what happens. You're not going to hurt anybody if you do it properly. You just have to keep it clean, you know. Yeah. Oh, I got a rainy drill. I think Amazon, here, listen to this, Amazon. Get a rainy drill. Get a rainy drill set that you can buy. You know, because typically, you know, classically, it's the brace and bit hand crank thing, you know. not the air driven drill. You know, like they sometimes get the. It was a classic brace and brit thing. You know? Let's go back to our clinical tale of woe. Sometimes I have to save myself from myself. Okay, so this one was claustrophobic. All right, fair enough. A doctor ordered Versed, which properly is termed midazolam, 2 milligrams IV, in the electronic, and now we enter another realm of problems: the electronic medical record and the electronic ordering sheet. The electronic medical record at 2:47 p.m. 2 minutes later, the pharmacy verified the order. Okay, somebody's paying attention downstairs. The radiology department staff said they could not give the medicine because they were very busy and the patient would need to be monitored. Well, I mean, the radiology staff, has had long experience of sidestepping any responsibility for anything to do with actual patient care for a long, long time. Hence, what we just heard. So Nurse A, who was functioning as the, quote, help-all nurse, that's a new term. I never encountered that one when I was, actively a doc on the floors and staff doc. Was asked by patient's Nurse B, to go to radiology and give the drugs, the medicine. They say medication. I hate that. I'll say drug. Give the drugs. At 2:59 p.m., Nurse A went to the. Oh no, I love this. Here we go. Here we are. Automated dispensing cabinet, ADC. That doesn't mean aide de camp like it usually means in things. ADC. Automated dispensing cabinet. It sounds like, gosh, automated dispensing cabinet. I'm gonna have to let that fester a bit in my heart on that one for a while, and search for Versed in the patient's profile. The patient's profile. The patient's profile. See, the profile is a word that's getting a clear pass on this one too. When she couldn't find the drug listing, she selected the override function to search for the drug. She entered the first 2 letters of the drug, VE, that popped up, and clicked on the first drug that popped up. This sounds like one of these automated libraries where you go in and you look through the catalog or whatever, and you turn in your slips and poof, little trolleys go up into the stacks. Robots pull out the books and the trays, and then the librarians call you, oh, and then you go collect your books. This is what this sounds like. She took out the vial and read the instructions on how to reconstitute drug. Well, it's a 10 milligram vial of vecuronium, and vecuronium is readily soluble in any water-based solvents solvent. So, saline, water, activated ringers, put some liquid in it. It's a 10 milligram. So typically, what we would do is we would dilute it up with whatever IV fluid we were giving. Squirt in 10 milligrams. So it's like 1 milligram per mil. We dilute up to 10 milligrams or 10 cc's, and it's 10 cc's syringe. And so you could, Now, I'm 190 pounds. Okay, but 190, 195 pounds. Okay. If you wanted to completely paralyze me for intubation purposes, you'd give me 6 to 7 milligrams of vecuronium. And you go whoosh. You wouldn't do this titrating and then you go whoosh. It has basically no effect on heart rate and blood pressure. Whoosh. And I could be intubated within 20 to 35 or 40 seconds depending on your level of skill. Alright. If you're more skillful, you could do like 4 to 5 milligrams, 6 maybe, and wait a little bit. You might have to exert a bit more pressure to get the tube in, but you'd get it in, all right? An intubating dose of vecuronium is between 7 and 8 milligrams, okay? After 45 minutes, it's relatively easily reversible, although, the drug metabolites hang around a bit, and then by that time, it generally does not matter, although there might be a little sort of like, oh, I don't feel quite as strong as I might feel. But it's not significant in terms of your ventilation. Now, if you're at 6,000 feet, but this isn't the case, but there it is. All right. So these guys, we never did find out how much drug this woman gave this woman, okay? I'm not so sure it's a fatal medication. Well, it was the start of the final common pathway, I think. Well, there's like, when they're talking about some baggies and labels and things. Well, see, baggies and labels don't cut any ice with me. Anyway, so Nurse A, that's the help-all nurse from the floor, patient's floor, then went from the ICU to the radiology department during an interview for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services investigation. She mentioned she had never been to the PET scan area before. I have never been to a PET scan area before. Now, admittedly, I got out of this game back in 1991, all right, so I was just coming into view, so that has nothing to do with the price of wheat here today. She identified the patient, reconstituted the drug, gave it, but did not monitor the patient after the injection. Very bad for any drug, even the most trivial of drugs. They may say they're not allergic to it and they've taken it before, but you always want to wait around a bit to see if the shit's going to hit the fan when somebody takes a drug that you've given them. Hell, you don't know, the patient may be lying. Or maybe it's that particular day when that's not going to work that way. She identified the patient, reconstituted the drug, gave it, but not monitored the patient. She went back to the ICU and gave Nurse B, I love it, the baggie containing the remaining drug. Aha! A few minutes later, a transporter noticed the patient was unresponsive. The orderly, now elevated to the level of transporter, noticed. There's no shame in the term orderly. And there's no shame in speaking up as a transporter or orderly or whatever ancillary medical care employee you are that contributes to patient welfare. When I was on the vascular service as a resident, we had a particularly very aggressive in terms of making sure the patients were doing okay. They call it patient care assistant. He wasn't an orderly. It wasn't like he transported, but he was like the step below the LPNs. But I'll tell you, this guy gave so much good care, particularly because the vascular service had a lot of older guys. They were uncomfortable having women nurses, female nurses, you know, looking around, you know, things that maybe weren't at their best, you know, state, you know. And I can't remember this guy. I can't remember this guy's name. I remember when he got married, he invited me to his wedding, and I, you know, because I was on call and I was working, I couldn't go to his wedding. But I gave him $50. This is 1970. Gosh, this is 1976, 75, 6. So, you know, just for inflation, that's like, it's essentially I gave him a $500 check for his wedding. He was a really good guy. I never met his wife. I never met his wife. He was a good. I think he went on to go to nursing school and became, you know, a good. Well, he would have been a good nurse. I mean, hell, he was, you know, he cared about people. He cared about his patients. And gosh, plus he also made it a habit of when a patient in the hospital somewhere died and hadn't eaten their food, he made it a point to give me their food so that I didn't have to buy lunch or spend money down at the cafeteria. So he took good care of me too, so it all worked out, you know. I hear all the quid pro quo. I suppose now I'd be indicted by Mueller or something. Yeah. Contribution to taking care of patients. You can't do that. He was a good guy. It was like when Faith gave me a ration of shit for when I sold the house we were in before we went to Fort Wayne. The neighbors, I knew the neighbors were going to buy it, but we had a fellow in our operating room who had just gotten his real estate license, and I said, "Well, I'll let you act as the agent for the sale." Because that would have given him, see, that gave him a commission, see? And I knew at that point I could afford it. Because it was good, you know, it's going to be a $5,000 problem. All I wanted to do was break even. And so I did that. And, oh man, Faith just gave me this incredible ration of shit. Well, see, she had another person she wanted to act as agent for the sale, which would have been just as much of a financial hit one way or the other. That would be the individual, is Maggie Huff, that I completely disliked. I thought, oh, I got Richard Brentner on the case. He was a great surgical instrument technician. He was as far as I can see, he did a great real estate deal for me. It was the same deal, but I'd negotiate with the neighbors. But I thought, if anybody's going to get the commission, I want a guy that's just starting out in our operating room to get it. So I stirred that toward him, and Faith going, she never understood the point of trying to help somebody starting out, you know? Well, I don't know. I still think if you can help somebody starting out, help them. Didn't cost me a cent. I was going to get the same amount of money either way. Either Maggie Huff was going to screw me, or Richard Brentner was going to take the commission. I'd rather give it to Richard Brentner. Anyway, he was a good surgical instrument technician. I've worked with him. I'll tell you, I have worked with far better operating room nurses than I have. I can't say that. Most floor nurses, only 3 or 4 floor nurses I've ever worked with have been overtly incompetent. Well, of course, then there was that woman on the urology service, the head nurse that was dry landing the temp sheet. She recorded a temperature of like 99 at 4, and we walked in at 6, and the guy was room temperature. Hello, Eloise. Well, I've told you about that. Anyway, so now we're back. So we've talked about this, you know, the nurse A went out and diluted the drug up and gave it, and then she put the remnant in the baggie, and she's coming back up to the floor like a dog leaving, you know, bringing back its vomit, a baggie full of this, you know, and well, then they called a code, and then of course the two nurses heard the call, and then they, you know, went to the radiology. Patient been intubated and resuscitated. Nurse B knows the baggie contained vecuronium instead of Versed, and asked Nurse A if that was what she had given the patient. Nurse A confirmed vecuronium was what was given, and admitted her mistake. And then there's a whole thing about how the record would have been entered and things. And see, that's the problem with all this electronic shit. And then the subsequent, you know, the end of the summary is patients suffered severe anoxic brain damage and died the next day. Well, you know, my mother had had a lot of head trauma when she had this head hematoma there at Traverse City, but she never was anoxic, and she never had, you know, it was like she got, I always call her, she's brain. Now for a long time she was a lot nicer after she was brained. You know, she used to be mean. She wasn't nearly as mean for a number of years, and then after a while, then she became even meaner. But she didn't like me in the first place, so I can't really separate that out. That's neither here nor there. Nurse A was fired a few days after the incident. I don't know. I mean, okay. That's key points. Nurse A apparently did not see the warning paralyzing agent. All right. Actual amount of vecuronium. See, we don't know what that was. Well, it's unknown. Then we have the 5 rights of medication administration. Actually, I would say drug administration. I don't like medication. Right patient, right drug, right dose, right route, and right time. Fair enough. Nurse A may not have been familiar with Versed, i.e. midazolam, which, unlike vecuronium, does not need to be reconstituted. Well, on the other hand, and unlike vecuronium, doesn't fucking cause neuromuscular blockade. That, to me, is the more salient point. Hospital's ADC. Oh, that's right. Oh, what was the thing? Let's go back here and find it earlier. ADC. Automated dispensing cabinet. This just sounds like a real, you know, what do they call that? It was like some 19th century chamber of horrors. Searchable. Well, okay, by generic or brand name, but not both. But not both, that doesn't make sense. It's a, you either want either or, not both, but that implies it's in searchable. But that is a senseless statement. The machine's default search is by generic name, which ought to be the way all drugs are referred to, period. This trade name stuff needs to have stopped. I thought it had pretty much been eliminated, but no, it's back and alive again. Even if the patient had been given Versed, she would have been required monitoring. Well, of course. Well, then they didn't have a monitoring statement of people in, you know, non-airway intensive areas. And, well, I mean, and you need to do that. You need to have a policy for people to come and monitor people who have been giving respiratory sedative drugs. You need to have a minder or a holder or something to, you need to have an ambu bag on hand, and somebody who knows how to use it, not just carry it around like a Masonic ring, okay? That's a good point. And then the death, it says, physician said the medication error was hearsay. What the, you can't, what? You know, he can't. A doc making a call to medical examiner has no legal standing to make that statement. You know, at least in Ohio, because it was not documented in medical record. The medical examiner declined the case. Well, he'd only got caught up in this can of worms. Took at Vanderbilt, in Nashville, in Tennessee. You know, like the most powerful joints in the whole state. I'm assuming that's where it was. And then they're talking about CMS to consider discontinuing Medicare to Vanderbilt. Man, I'm not going to do that. Well, that's another adventure into medical misadventures. This a bit more documented than most because people were trying to comply with their employee policies and procedures, and they ended up, you know, doing it. So let's just see what's going on here. I'll say bye-bye, YouTubers.